Jayapal, Farmers Union. Rob and John, cannabis. He's got a great pharmacy. If you want to go, thank you. Here, okay. Thank you. We are.
Actually, I'm from Spokane.
Angie? She is running just a couple minutes late, but she knows we're going to get started.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Come on closer, everyone.
Bob at Canvas.
Oh, good. Hey, Maggie. Hey, Maggie. How are you? Thank you for doing this. Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. I represent Washington's 7th Congressional District, and I am just thrilled to be standing with my colleagues and with people across this country to stand up against the corporate consolidation and the mega mergers that screw workers, consumers, and small businesses and rig the economy against them. We are here today to stand up for a pro-worker, pro-consumer, pro-small business economy that puts people first over corporate greed and monopolies. So today we are introducing the Monopoly Busters Caucus. We are so thrilled about this. This is a new caucus of members across the ideological spectrum of the Democratic caucus who see the effects of corporate consolidation in their own districts and are ready to fight to unrig the economy for our constituents in key areas like housing, food, healthcare, that is already squeezing strapped families. I especially want to thank my colleagues, Representatives Pat Ryan, Chris DeLuzio, and Agriculture Committee Ranking Member Angie Craig for co-chairing this caucus with me, as well as I see Representative Goodlander, Representative Kassar, and others who are founding members of the caucus. The caucus is going to focus on kitchen table issues, on fighting for working people and against corporate greed, and we're going to do this in every district across the country. We're going to hold shadow hearings, we're going to draft reports, create real tangible tools that help communities fight for the economy that they deserve. There couldn't be a more urgent moment as Trump continues to sow chaos and stack the cabinet with people who have close ties to Wall Street, and as he prepares for a corporate tax giveaway that takes money out of the pockets of poor working people to give it to corporate CEOs. We have a different solution. We believe that across the aisle, we can fight corporate power and we can win. In 2015, two big grocery chains merged, Albertsons and Safeway. They said that the deal would be better for people. They claimed that the merger would pass on savings to shoppers, but that is not what happened. Instead, dozens of stores closed, creating food and pharmacy deserts, making it harder and more expensive for people to get fresh food and prescription drugs. Workers at the stores that closed lost their jobs. Mom and pop corner grocery stores were driven out of business. That is what happens when corporate power gets consolidated. Regular people lose. So when Albertsons announced in 2022 that it was going to merge, this time with Kroger, people were rightly worried that we would see the same cycle all over again, that the giant consolidation would drive up prices and close neighborhood grocery stores. Workers worried that the merger would make it harder for them to bargain for better pay and working conditions, and that store closures were going to mean layoffs. If the merger had gone through, it would have meant that the single corporate entity that they created would have owned 22% of the grocery market in the United States. That's 1 in 4 grocery stores, and that it would be second only to Walmart's 25% share. But this time, my colleagues in Congress signed on to an amicus brief with me. We stood up with grocery workers across the country to challenge the proposed deal with the Biden Department of Justice. And after being blocked by the courts, the deal fell apart. So it's proof that when we stand up and fight together across our ideological spectrum against corporate greed, we can win, and that's actually what people want us to do. We can lower prices so every person can afford to put food on the table. We can raise wages so that Americans don't have to work 3 jobs to get by. And we can stop corporations from becoming so big that they don't care if they're failing consumers. And we can make sure that our government works for all of us and not just corporate titans. We can and we must, and the American people are counting on us to do that. And with that, I'm thrilled to hand it over to Clayton Bennett, who is a worker from Spokane, Washington, my home state, to tell you exactly how the failed Kroger-Albertsons merger would have harmed workers across the country. Clayton?
Thank you. So I'm a manager at an Albertsons owned Safeway in Spokane, Washington. I've worked for the company for 36 years and have firsthand experience on the impact of corporate mergers on workers and customers. I started my career back with Albertsons back in 1989 in Florida, shortly after graduating high school. Back then, the future of the industry looked bright enough for me to forego a college education. Despite low entry wages, I had no trouble getting hours and felt like I could work my way through the chain and then have enough money to support me and my family. Then came corporate acquisitions. In the early 2000s, the capital investment firm that currently owns Albertsons bought the company's Florida division from another giant corporation. At that time, Albertsons had 125 stores in the Florida division. By 2018, the new firm had sold off all but two of those stores. A year later, they sold that last 2 stores as well. Some stores turned into other businesses. Some stores became other grocery stores. In one case I'll never forget, a Florida grocery chain called Publix bought one of the Albertsons directly across the street from yet another Publix. So much for consumer choice. The sell-off shocked friends and former co-workers. They had invested careers in Albertsons, and now they had to start from scratch at other companies or chart new paths at the time of great economic uncertainty. Then came the robot invasion. About a decade after I'd moved to the Pacific Northwest, self-checkout machines installations ramped up. I remember hearing my store director at the time saying that more than 50% of our business was going through the self-checkout. So why did we need cashiers anymore? That stung, to say the least. As you might expect, stores started pushing as much business through the self-checkouts as they could in a race to maximize profits. Then came talk of the Kroger-Albertsons mega merger. Though we staffed up more to handle through the pandemic as things returned to normal, stores just stopped replacing people as they burnt out or left for other opportunities. In my opinion, the stores kept staffing low during merger talks so they could look more profitable on paper. After workers successfully blocked a $24 billion merger last year, staffing started reaching critical levels. This short staffing had led to longer lines at the check stands, more theft, and more burnout. Most days we're lucky if we have 1 or 2 2 cashiers to run the check stands on peak hours. With the exception of Christmas Eve, I don't remember the last time we staffed our checkouts fully. When someone calls in sick, there's nobody to replace them. Often people are too busy working other jobs that they must hold because we don't give them enough hours. This staffing crisis has taken a physical toll on me too. My wife keeps telling me to go see a doctor about the intense headaches that I've been getting recently as the result of stress that I'm under to fill gaps in the schedule. I keep telling her that it's on my list of things to do, but so far I'm too busy working. Enough is enough. These companies need to stop blowing billions on stock buybacks and failed mergers. Instead, they need to invest that money into hiring more workers to better serve customers, increase wages and benefits to help retain those workers, and building more stores to better serve the communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now it's a great honor to introduce my colleague from the great state of Pennsylvania who's been an absolute champion on these issues, Congressman Chris DeLuzio.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jayapal, and Clayton, very powerful words from you as well.
I'm honored to be joined by my colleagues and so many who will share their own stories of how this monopoly and corporate power has hurt folks. We all know this, that monopoly power, this out-of-control corporate power, has been killing the American dream, hurting small businesses and those entrepreneurs, hurting workers, hurting all of us as consumers, making growth worse in our country. And where I'm from in Western Pennsylvania, we feel this like so many others in this country of ours do. And we know we need something different. I think about the small businesses, one of which you'll hear from my district today, how important they are to our communities and our regions, our main streets. These are often the lifebloods of our communities. They're involved in civic society, youth sports, community charitable efforts. I could go on and on. These are really important businesses that matter to our community, and they've been getting the crap kicked out of them by monopolies. We got to do something different. You heard Congresswoman Jayapal talk about grocery stores. You heard it from Clayton as well. One of the things I want to talk about, and I'll introduce a constituent we'll talk about, is pharmacy benefit managers and what they've done to drug costs for so many people, what they've done to pharmacies. 4 corporations operating pharmacies account for just about half of all prescription revenue in this country last year. 4 of them. CVS, Walgreens, Cigna, United. And guess what? 3 of them also own and operate pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs. That's Caremark, Express Scripts, and Optum. What's a PBM? Well, it's a corporate middleman, essentially, in the middle of financial flows for prescription drugs. Taking out rents or taking out money that you're all and we all pay for when we go to try to fill a prescription. They're supposed to negotiate discounts off list prices with the manufacturer, but they're really also involved in determining how much the pharmacy gets paid when a patient comes in and picks up their drugs at the pharmacy. They're supposed to negotiate with health plans or employers about how much they pay when someone goes to fill their prescriptions. And those 3 PBMs I talked about, owned by 3 of the largest pharmacy corporations, they process about 80% of all prescription claims or medicines filled in this country. That's a lot of power, right in the central part of an economy that we all need to work well. And those PBMs, they're also vertically integrated. And by that I mean those same corporation might own a pharmacy, an insurer, a provider, and a PBM. They have every incentive to rip people off, to hurt small businesses like pharmacies, to make it harder for Americans across this country to get the medicine they need. They are absolutely incentivized to abuse that power, and we see it, the way they've driven up costs. I was glad to see the FTC under the Biden administration take action against PBMs. Hopefully that will continue now. But we've seen them put a squeeze on independent pharmacists, pushing them out of business, and you'll hear from, again, one in my district talking about what they've seen in their industry of independent pharmacists. Too long, too many down here turned a blind eye to this corporate power. Maybe worse, they were part of it. I think this group is fighting back, and I'm hopeful we will find some folks across the aisle to work with us. As Congresswoman Jayapal said, this should not be a partisan issue to stand up for small businesses, for consumers, for workers. But I'm very proud to introduce both John and Bob Kanowitz, who run Town Drugs in Aspinwall in my district, and John's going to share a little bit about their business and how PBMs have made life difficult for them and their patients. John.
Good afternoon. In 2024, nearly 2,300 pharmacies closed nationwide. Since the beginning of 2025, we're only in April, over 70 pharmacies have closed in my home state of Pennsylvania. 21 of those counties in Pennsylvania have fewer than 10 pharmacies. These numbers are alarming. The top 3 PBMs, as Congressman DeLuzio said, control over 80% of all pharmacy claims filled in the United States. These PBMs have created a monopoly. The PBM, the insurer, the mail-order pharmacy, and in some cases the brick-and-mortar retail pharmacy are owned by the same parent company. Pharmacies contract with PBMs to have the ability to fill patients' prescriptions. Contracts are aggressive. Basically, take it or leave it, with almost no room for negotiations. If a pharmacy doesn't sign a contract with the PBM, we would lose access to have the ability to fill all those patients' prescriptions. PBMs dictate which pharmacy a patient can use, which medications are covered, how much a patient pays at the pharmacy counter, and what the pharmacy gets reimbursed. PBMs frequently under-reimburse pharmacies. it is extremely common to get under-reimbursed $200 or $300 sometimes for a medication. We're talking about life-saving medications here. Medications such as EpiPens, Paxlovid, HIV medications, GLP-1s that a lot of people use for diabetes management. This ultimately impacts patients' access to these crucial medications. PBMs have also been engaging in patient steering to their own retail, specialty, or mail-order pharmacies. They do this a few ways. A couple common ways they do it are sending letters directly to the patient, letting them know they can save money if they use their owned mail-order pharmacy. They also sometimes limit patients to 2 30-day fills at the pharmacy of their choice. After that, they must go to the PBM-owned mail-order pharmacy or brick-and-mortar pharmacy. It makes it difficult for community pharmacies like us to stay in business, and it really threatens patient access to use the pharmacy of their choice. Ultimately, these predatory practices impact local communities and patients. Many pharmacies are reducing staff, resulting in longer wait times. I've heard stories of some patients waiting days for their prescription. This includes antibiotics, antivirals, medications that need to be started very, very quickly. Many pharmacies are also reducing their hours, closing on weekends to offset some of the losses that we're incurring from these negative reimbursed claims due to the PBMs. Pharmacies are permanently closing every day in the United States. This leaves some towns, even entire counties, without a pharmacy, creating what's known as a pharmacy desert. We support the congressmen and congresswomen who are going after industries whose anti-competitive practices are negatively impacting local businesses, industries, and communities. Thank you.
Such powerful testimony. Thank you so much. Now it is a great honor to introduce another one of our co-chairs for this caucus and somebody who has been doing the work in the district from the great state of New York, Congressman Pat Ryan.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you especially to Congresswoman Jayapal for organizing this group and my partners here in this work. And I'm excited about this. I think it's really important, and I invited several constituents of mine to come. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it to provide this sort of similar testimony, so I'm going to do my best to carry their voices on behalf of another similar issue. When I talk with folks in my district, which is in the Hudson Valley of New York, about 2 hours north of New York City, the number one and really number one and two things I hear is frustration and this sense of powerlessness. Frustration that even though folks are working hard, they're doing everything that is asked of them, they can't afford to provide for their family: housing, health care, gas, groceries, utilities. I believe, and I think we all believe, it is inherently un-American that only a select few in this country can now live out the American dream. And the reason for this is clear, and we have to speak very directly about it. In every one of those industries that I named, we've let monopolies, corporate monopolies, drive up costs, drive down quality, all while making record-breaking profits. And hardworking Americans pay the price every single day across almost every dimension of their lives. Building on what you heard from my colleagues and directly building on what we just heard about PBMs and prescription drug costs, I want to focus on healthcare as well today and how it's impacted my community and my district. I specifically want to talk about what happens when United Healthcare, now the largest healthcare company in the world by revenue, and the 9th largest company overall, decides they're going to come to your community. What does that look like? For years now, in the community I grew up in, they've been buying medical practices, small, independently owned healthcare practices, community practices at an aggressive pace, including the 2 largest practices in our community of the Hudson Valley and the 2,500 providers and doctors and healthcare workers there. Now, In the United States of America, 1 in every 10 doctors in the country work at a United-owned healthcare practice, and that number is only going up. What has that meant for people? We started to get calls into our office from constituents saying something has changed. Healthcare was never easy, but it's a lot harder now, and it's more expensive, and that doesn't feel right. So we actually just last month launched a community inquiry in our district to ask people for their feedback. We thought we'd get a few dozen, maybe a few hundred people to respond. We had thousands of my constituents in the first few days alone respond to this community inquiry. We have the full results if folks are interested, but a few of the high-level points. 36% said there's been a significant reduction in the quality and accessibility of customer service. 25% reported inaccurate billing. 41% said they'd experienced an overall decline in the quality and access to their care since United took over, which is just only a year or two in most cases. And I just wanted to share 3 quotes from constituents, and these are just 3 of thousands of voices. And I think it's pretty brave, frankly, that folks would share this in the middle, and just given all the pressures on them, too, to be willing to share these stories. The person who I really wanted to come but just couldn't make it today, her name is Kimberly. She's from the small town of Tivoli in my district. Here's her quote: "I've had no shortage of negative experiences since Optum took over my medical practice. I tried for more than a year to get an appointment with a specialist as I was feeling increasingly ill and kept getting pushed off. My appointments were repeatedly canceled. Once I finally did get in, it turned out that I had cancer. They made me wait a year to be seen, and it was cancer. Thank God I've been lucky so far and I'm in remission, but I really feel someone is going to die if they don't get these problems under control." Another of my constituents named Naomi from Marlboro, New York said, and I think this is especially powerful, what Optum, and Optum, you heard Optum before, Optum is the healthcare affiliate of United Healthcare. What Optum has done is put a corporate wall between my children and their physician, and therefore their overall health. After the Optum takeover, their doctor became less attentive, less relaxed in our visits, and seemed to need to push us out the door just to see the next patient. And then finally, I wanted to share a quote from a provider at one of these practices, a former provider who actually left. This is what she said. "I worked at Crystal Run, which is one of the practices that was acquired, for a long time, and can confidently say that the purchase by Optum has accelerated the decline in the patient experience. The management doesn't listen to the providers and makes it near impossible for them to leave and provide care elsewhere in the Hudson Valley. They don't care that we're overworked and manage us through fear and edict. The care given in the office is still great. The doctors are still doing a great job, but they're overwhelmed, understaffed, and now have very low morale. The patients are suffering for this, and it won't stop unless someone holds the corporate machine accountable." Again, those are just 3 of literally thousands of similarly powerful pieces of input. That's what this caucus, that's what this group is about. The American people need a stronger and louder and more ferocious voice to do exactly what that last person said, hold these big corporations accountable. We are going to fight back against these big and powerful and greedy, I would add, corporations, hold the bad actors accountable, and ultimately put power back where it belongs with the American people. So thank you again to my colleagues.
Thank you so much for that incredibly powerful set of statements from your constituents. You've heard about healthcare now, pharmacy benefit managers, big corporations like United. You heard from a grocery store worker. It's now an honor to introduce another co-chair of the caucus who's going to talk about the food chain. Our ranking member of the Agriculture Subcommittee, Agriculture Committee, Angie Craig, is here from the state of Minnesota.
Well, I want to say thank you so much to my founding co-chairs, Representative Jayapal, Ryan, and DeLuzio, for being here with me today. It's such an honor to be able to launch this exciting project with you. I'm going to give it to you straight. The middle class is getting screwed in this country, and we all know it. Right now, we're watching as my Republican colleagues try to gut Medicaid and cut SNAP by $230 billion, which will result in higher health care costs and more hungry kids, seniors, and veterans. This is already bad as it is, but the real kicker is that these cuts are all designed to pay for taxpayer-funded handouts to billionaires. So this caucus is coming together at an important time in our history. As the top Democrat on the House Agriculture Committee, I've seen firsthand how consolidation in the ag sector is squeezing our family farmers and producers, as well as driving up cost for consumers. Capitalism only works when there is competition, and we're watching that competition dwindle before our eyes. Family farms remain the backbone of Minnesota's rural communities, but increasingly we're seeing big corporations push our farmers and producers out of the market. But what does that really mean? It means that a few big companies can set the prices family farmers get for their crops, and they can jack up costs at the gas pump and the grocery store. It means input costs for mom and pop operations go up while their profit margins go down. And as a result, they may not be able to pass that business or farm to the next generation of kids or grandkids. It means it's harder for new and beginning farmers to get their operations off the ground. And even if they do, they run the risk of being priced out of the market in the long run. And it means there are fewer companies competing for your business, backing you into a corner and limiting your choices when it comes to putting food on the table. It doesn't have to be this way. At a time when the administration is launching our country headfirst into a global trade war instead of strategically putting forward tariffs, it's more important than ever that we uplift small and local businesses right here at home. Minnesota farmers and producers grow some of the best products in the world, and we should be opening up markets to them, not shutting them out, especially not by allowing multinational mega corporations to monopolize the ag sector. That's why we work in this caucus. It's why it's going to be so incredibly important. Together, we can fight consolidation, restore competition, strengthen the middle class, and lower cost for producers and consumers alike. And with that, I am so proud to have someone who can talk about this more specifically with us in this fight and with us here today. It's my pleasure to introduce Mike Strantz, Vice President of Advocacy for the National Farmers Union. Mike?
Thank you, Representative Craig, and thank you to the members of the Monopoly Busters Caucus for this event today. National Farmers Union is a grassroots organization that represents family farmers and ranchers across the country. We've been in operation for more than 100 years, and in that 100 years, we've spent a lot of that time fighting against monopolies that squeeze family farmers and ranchers across the country. Farming is an inherently risky business, and there's lots of uncertainties every year when you put a crop in the ground or build your herd. You take a bet on the future. And there's a lot of uncertainty out there right now, whether that's a declining farm economy, natural disasters, and an increasingly changing climate, volatile markets, and loss of markets overseas. But one thing remains the same year in and year out, it seems. It's that monopolies are squeezing family farmers, ranchers, and our communities. Just a handful of companies dominate many sectors of agriculture. Only 4 companies control a little more than 80% of the beef packing market. More than 60% of the market for pork processing or chicken processing is controlled by 4 companies. It's just as bad on the input side, as seeds, chemicals, fertilizer, other inputs for crops are similarly dominated. And for large farm machinery, 3 firms control 95% of that market. When monopolies have that much control, they charge us more, they pay family farmers less, they squelch innovation in agriculture, and they restrict what we can do with what we buy as family farmers and ranchers. Thinking back to 5 years ago, right about now, COVID caused a great calamity in our food system and our food supply chain. The consolidated food supply chain was exposed. We saw what happened when processing couldn't happen at large beef plants and backlogs of livestock resulted. We had a glut in fluid milk when markets collapsed and the processing capacity evaporated. And there were shortages and supply chain difficulties that reverberated through the economy for years. There were many reasons for this, but perhaps most of all was the fact that we have such a consolidated agriculture marketplace. We've got to learn from that. And that's why this Monopoly Busters Caucus will play an important role in continuing to shed light on this big, big issue for family farmers and ranchers. That's why Farmers Union started the Fairness for Farmers campaign a few years ago. We pushed for lawmakers to invest in local and regional marketing options, to protect and empower competition laws like the Packers and Stockyards Act, and to enforce antitrust laws that had been overlooked for decades. We've seen great progress in the last 5 years or so on this topic, but family farmers and ranchers need champions, and this caucus is a place for those champions to step up. So I thank Representative Craig, the founding co-chairs, and the members of the Monopoly Busters Caucus for bringing today's event together. Thank you.
Wonderful. So important. Thank you so much for that testimony. We are, Pat, Chris, Angie, and I are proud to be co-chairs, but we're even prouder that we have incredible members who are also founding members. So let me just introduce them all and ask them to come up and give some comments. I'm going to introduce Maggie Goodlander from the state of New Hampshire, who actually has done the work in the Department of Justice to enforce antitrust laws. Becca Ballant, who serves on the subcommittee within Judiciary on Antitrust from the state of Vermont. Jerry Nadler, the ranking member of the Antitrust Subcommittee on Judiciary and our former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, as well as my friend Greg Kassar, the chairman of the Congressional Progressive Caucus from the state of Texas. So, Maggie, if you want to start us off on that.
Representative Jayapal, thank you so much for bringing us together today. You know, we come from all across the country, and we come for different reasons, but we're united by the same basic idea. It's the powerful idea that led me to go to the Department of Justice and serve on the front lines of the fight against corporate monopolies who are truly screwing over this country and making the American dream out of reach for so many of us. But I wanted to share 3 observations about what I learned on the front lines of this fight and what brings me to this work in Congress. The first thing is that these ideas that animate us all, these ideas are as old as America, and they're the most deeply rooted American ideas, that power should be checked. Just like political power's got to be checked, so does corporate power. It's rooted in the basic idea of fairness, and that is what we are all about. So these are deeply American ideas. The second thing is that these are American ideas that have got to address themselves to a problem that is very real and pervasive. And you've heard it already today, and we'll hear more about it soon. Monopolies and corporate abuses of power are the ultimate drivers of waste, fraud, and abuse. They're making us less free, and I come from the live free or die state, the state of New Hampshire. They're making us less free because they're robbing us of basic choices and our basic ability to pursue the American dream. Corporate abuses of power are making us less safe. And we heard about the stakes, you know, whether it comes to our personal health and safety, the ways in which big insurers, the biggest corporations in the world, the middlemen who feed into this system are robbing us of our ability to pursue and get access to the health care we need. And I hear it every single day from patients and providers who, and Pat detailed it well, and we should all be collecting the stories of what these abuses of power have done to make us personally less safe. It's also making our country less safe. It's undermining our national security. I see it every day in the work that I do on the House Armed Services Committee, where we used to have more than 50 major defense companies in this country. Now we're down to 5. And this is a story that repeats itself across the American economy, but it's making us less safe. And of course, it's making life less affordable, which goes to our basic safety and our basic freedom. But I'm the great-granddaughter and the granddaughter of family farmers, and I see it every day. I hear about it every day. Family farmers who are getting screwed by big ag corporations. You see it just all across our economy. But the reason I'm here today, and I think what unites us all, and what I saw in the work I did at the Department of Justice, Congress can do something about this. Our antitrust laws, the anti-monopoly spirit is as old as America, and in some cases, our antitrust laws haven't been updated in more than a century. You heard just a moment ago about the Packers and Stockyards Act, one of my personal favorites. A lot of these laws were written long ago and could use a real update. Our tax code is riddled with loopholes that this group will fight to close. The opportunities for us to really work together from across the country and across party lines, I think the possibilities are endless because we are all fueled by deeply American ideas in addressing a problem in which the stakes couldn't be higher. So I'm really grateful to be a part of this effort and grateful to you, Representative Jayapal, for bringing us all together today. Thank you. And I will turn it over to you. To my dear colleague and neighbor, Becca Ballant.
Northern New England. Hi, I'm Becca Ballant. I represent the state of Vermont, and so excited to be here with my colleagues and the folks who traveled here to tell the stories of why it is that we have to stand up to monopolies. I want to bring us back to the inauguration. Who was sitting behind the president at the inauguration? It was an entire row of billionaires. Billionaires that control the economy but right now. Billionaires who are pulling the strings in this building right now. We should not just be Democrats standing here. This, as Maggie said, this is an American ideal, which is competition, standing up for the little guy. But many of our colleagues have lost their way. We know, as others have said, this is about fairness. When competition is stifled, we all suffer from it. It's about your grocery bill. It is about having massive retailers control all of the products that we need to live our lives day in and day out, especially if you're a parent. This is about small businesses being swallowed up by monopolies. We hear about it in the healthcare system. We hear about it in grocery and retailers. We've all seen it in our lives. It's about your housing, where AI-generated algorithms decide what your rent should be, and that rent is now just another commodity to be manipulated by monopolies. If we don't make structural changes to the economy, it will continue to be an economy that only works for the billionaires and not for the rest of us. So, here's what I want to say today. We are here to say what is happening in this country right now is absolutely, positively wrong, and that we need partners in this work. It cannot just be the Democrats who sit on the antitrust subcommittee who are doing this work. Republicans in districts across this country know that they are allowing their small businesses to be screwed over. So let's be clear about who's trying to solve the problem and who is just going along to get along. I'm very happy to share the stage with all of these leaders, and we all have to be together in this fight. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Greg Casar. I represent the heart of Texas. I'm chairman of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and proud to be a founding member of the Monopoly Busters Caucus. For too long, big corporations have bought up politicians so that they can crush smaller businesses, gobble those up, and shut out competition. For too long, those big corporations have gotten bigger, a small number of people have gotten richer, and working people have gotten screwed. Workers have gotten underpaid by these monopolies, families have been overcharged by the monopolies, and small businesses have been crowded out. Now is the time for our Democratic Party to say, with one voice, that our central mission should be to break this unholy alliance between corporate greed and corrupt government. We can pass my Fairness for Small Farmers and Ranchers bill, which the Farmers Union has supported, to say to the big agriculture companies, you can't keep on overcharging at the grocery store, and you've got to fairly pay small farmers and ranchers. This is the kind of issue that brings urban communities together with rural communities. That whether you are progressive or conservative or independent or wherever in between, you believe that people should not be able to buy up politicians in order to suppress your wages or crush local businesses. I started out my career as a labor organizer, where we could get hundreds of construction workers who believed in all sorts of different things and even spoke different languages to come together and agree that our joint mission should be taking on the big developers, the big corporations that are underpaying their workers and screwing over consumers. This kind of fight to bust corporate monopolies is the kind of fight that brings 99% of Americans together that are getting screwed over by the top 1% of 1%. I'll admit I'm not optimistic that the Trump administration will do what it takes to take on this issue, but I am optimistic to see this group of leaders. Thank you, Congresswoman Jayapal, and to the other co-chairs of the Monopoly Busters, who, while we may have different views on a variety of different issues, come together and say that taking on big monopolies must be a central goal of our party and our country moving forward. Thank you all very much. And now, Congressman Nadler, who's our ranking member on antitrust.
Thank you very much. You've heard the description of the damages that the over-concentrated economy is doing. And we've known the dangers of monopoly for a long time. We've had three major anti-monopoly laws passed in the history of the country. You had the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1890, sponsored by Senator Roger Sherman, who was a Republican. It was a very different Republican Party in those days. You had the Clayton Act in 1914, and finally the Seller-Kefauver Act in the 1950s. We haven't updated our anti-monopoly laws, our antitrust laws, since the 1950s. It is high time we did so, because the large companies have found the loopholes that were unforeseen in the 1950s and have concentrated the economy more and more and more into fewer and fewer companies. You heard how we once had 15 or 16 major defense contractors. Now we have 5. We once had many different airplane manufacturers. Now we have one in New York, one in the United States, competing with one in Europe. They need some antitrust problems there too. So the lack of antitrust enforcement, laws screws over everybody, enables them to charge very much higher prices, enables them to give very low service, and in the medical field, it enables managed care companies, very few of whom are around. They're consolidated, to get between the patient and the doctor, and to enable and to ration health care, often in a way that is very dangerous to the health of the health of the person, the health of the consumer. So it is high time we did something about this. When I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, we passed out of committee a package of major antitrust bills for the tech companies. In this Congress, I don't think we can pass it. I'm hopeful that there will be a Congress very soon, an administration very soon, that will enable us to pass major antitrust legislation. The Trump administration seems to be hopeless. The Trump administration is catering to the billionaires. You saw one after the other billionaire standing at the inauguration. They don't even hide it. So we are looking forward. I want to congratulate Pramila and the others here for forming the Anti-Monopoly Caucus. We are looking forward to effective action, even if it takes us a few years, because we must save this country from the effects of monopoly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ranking Member Nadler, and thank you to all of the co-chairs and all of the members who spoke here today, and to our guests who traveled from across the country to be with us. You see that corporate consolidation is killing consumers, workers, and small businesses, and the Monopoly Busters Caucus is ready to bust those monopolies. Thank you all so much.